Good morning. I think everybody can hear me. I'm here. This is my son, Robert. I'm Gracelyn Elmendorf, and I'm a survivor of suicide. I lost my husband in 1997 and my son in 2003. I now have the pleasure and the honor of serving the Jonathan Foundation for Teens. If y'all have not been to our website, please do. It is a plethora of information. There's a presentation that I actually focus on teaching teenagers things that they need to know, things in their tool belt that helps them to be that friend. That's our mantra. Be that friend. Reach out to one of your friends, your parent, a teacher that might be in suicidal crisis and knowing what to do. With that, I wanted to turn the meeting over to Susan Carter, and she is going to tell you what's going on today. But do go to our website. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I want to get started by just talking about the CE information, make sure that everyone knows to sign. Once I introduce the speakers, I will pass out the sign-in sheets. But I want to give you a little bit of information about how we are getting these accredited. The education specialist seeking CHES or MCHES credit is being offered by Suzette McClellan. See instructions on the sign-in sheet. Sign-in sheets will be passed down each row during the presentation. So if you fall in that category, make sure you follow the additional instructions. Everyone else, though, can simply sign by your name. If your name is not on one of the 3 sign-in sheets, simply write it in, and you will get credit as long as you have registered with AHEC. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Okay. I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Lee Fletcher from South Carolina Department of Mental Health. Lee is a master's prepared social worker and a program director for the SCDMH School Mental Health Program. Lee began his career in school mental health in 2016 as the program coordinator for the Southeastern School Behavioral Conference for the school mental health team at the University of South Carolina. Lee has served as an adolescent therapist, youth minister, and as a management technology expert. Presenting with Lee is Nancy Turner, Dr. Nancy Turner. She is the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health Services for Rock Hill School District 3. Dr. Turner served as Director of Exceptional Student Education for Rock Hill Schools York 3 for 6 years. She has also served as Director of Exceptional Student Education for Spartanburg District 2, Cabarrus County Schools in North Carolina, and Union County Public Schools, also in North Carolina. Please help me welcome Lee and Nancy.
All right, so I'm going to put that IT degree to good use and figure this out while I'm doing it. All right, I'll tell you a quick story, give you the youth ministry part of my life. I heard a story once about a lady who was meeting with her pastor and about her funeral. And she said, I want to be buried with a fork in my hand. And he said, why is that? I don't understand. She said, well, after every Wednesday night supper, when they would come around to clean up our dinner, they would tell us to keep our forks because something better was coming, dessert. So with that, I preface my presentation to say that Nancy Turner is going to give you guys the dessert. So we're going to try to make this work. Not sure what it is that's happening. There you go. So I'll give you the nitty-gritty of school mental health screening and some of the technical stuff, and then Nancy's going to tell you a great story and set of stories about their implementation of a school mental health screener in Rock Hill. So I've set my timer, and we're going to get started. So these are objectives. When recently I've become a foster parent, and one of the things that I've noticed is that my kids' backpacks are always loaded. I don't know what it is because, and they're also always a mess, but I don't know what it is about that makes it so loaded, but I've looked inside a few times, and when I've looked inside, I've seen tools that help them with learning. Some of the tools that have come from school, so some of the things like snacks or pencils or notebooks. The other tools that they have come from their school, things like a laptop, things like worksheets and library books. I've never seen a textbook come home, but those things are there from the school to help them with learning. We also tend to find the trash, the stuff that also kind of weighs the book down. Stuff from home being snack wrappers. We once had a dog eating an uneaten lunch out of a backpack in a bedroom, which was not fun for me to clean up. Broken pencils, that kind of, or excuse me, not broken pencils. That's part of the trash, the stuff that comes from home. And then from school, unfortunately, I often find overdue worksheets, maybe some notes from friends, but those kinds of things that they don't really need to keep in their backpack, but that are weighing them down. When we think about that, I also think about how there are invisible backpacks that our kids carry. And they're there and filled with the skills and skilled with the protective factors that can help them grow. Some of them, I'm going to grab my glasses. Some of them come from home, those skills being family, being unconditional love, being stability. The other things that they get, those skills and protective factors come from school, include friendships, mentorships, and most importantly, I guess, their job there is to receive their education. But they're also filled with negative experiences, thoughts and behaviors that can lead to and cause stress and anxiety. If we were to open up that backpack, what would we see inside? The other direction. We'd see that 1 in 5 youth are experiencing emotional behavioral problems that are severe enough to meet diagnostic criteria. We're talking here about anxiety disorders, which is the most prevalent disorder identified in children, but there are also behavior disorders, mood disorders, substance use disorders. And post-COVID, we found out that those have increased by about 43%. And then thinking about what do we do about that backpack that's kind of gotten messy? Well, we found that 70% of the kids who need treatment will seek it out in schools. And so so kids are there and they're looking for and asking for treatment. Excuse me. See, this is what happens when I can't read. 70% of those who need treatment aren't receiving it. That's what I needed to tell you. So the kids are walking around struggling, much like I am with these glasses, wanting to, are in need of treatment and are not receiving it. And then one of the studies did find that kids were 21 more times likely to receive treatment at a school than they were if they were just trying to find it in the community. So we know they need help. We know they aren't receiving it. But we also know where they are. They're in schools, and that's where they're most likely to receive that help. So we need to be able to identify those kids. And that's where school mental health screening comes in. So here we understand that a best practice in schools is to routinely monitor students' progress in a variety of domains, including academic skills, physical health, and mental health, right? So there's all kinds of monitoring of academics, whether it's reading, whether it's math, but when are we monitoring and when are we looking at their mental health? So what is a screener? Well, we're talking today about ones that assess for mental health risk. Something that's going to be a tool or a process. Tools often include maybe electronic-based or pen and pencil. The process is usually first a universal screener is done, and then progress monitoring happens for students who indicate that they might need additional support. There's a population that is chosen. Sometimes it could be the whole population, and most oftentimes it's a subgroup, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. It's data-based, so there are individual items these questions that are asked. They are scored. They are grouped within domains like general behavior, social behavior, academic behavior, emotional behavior. They can be completed by the student, by their teacher, and/or their parents. Though elementary school kids, we often see them completed by their parents and teachers. The older kids can complete them by themselves. Most importantly, what a screener does, it's a starting point. It's a starting point to identify the kids who need the supports. And to be clear, what it's not. We're not talking about what a therapist might do in a one-on-one situation where they are attempting to diagnose a disorder. We're not talking about in special education evaluations that might then come back and return, things about the developmental history, their cognitive functioning and processing, academic functioning. And we also are not talking about assessments that identify for risk when we talk about school safety. So threat assessments, this is when you're doing a school mental health screener, that's not something that we're going to talk about today. We're not looking to talk about the violence or the risk or threats to harm, though Nancy will share some stories about how some of that has worked its way kind of through and the screeners that she's done. The good thing about, figuring out where to start is that schools all have structure already. We talk about the multi-tiered system of support. Hopefully most of you are familiar with it, but we're talking here about a framework that can help with providing academic and behavioral strategies to students who have various needs. And this is when we are looking to then target and support those struggling students. They often involve, like I said, screening. They have tiers that can provide multi-levels of prevention. There is ongoing data collection in a school. When we're not talking about, it'll be often a school-wide approach and the parent involvement. But if you start at the bottom, there are preventative services to the tier 1, going to all of the kids. There at tier 2, we're talking about targeted services for students who display emerging problems, and then tier 3 services for chronic and severe adjustment issues. So how does that look within school mental health? Well, the screening, school mental health screening starts kind of at that tier 2 level. And so here we're looking for students who are at risk for the development of behavioral and or emotional problems, and students who may need more intensive supports beyond those that are provided at the tier 1 level where all students are receiving support. These screening results should guide the selection of the interventions and supports. When we're talking about supports in tier 2, those kind of supports may be appropriate for students who demonstrate risk factors that are emerging or indicate the potential development of problems. We can try some class participation. When you think about a tier 2 support for kids who are seeing that emerging problems, what might some of those children be dealing with that you might know in a school readily? Maybe not readily. I should have warned you. So they're being bullied. Yep. So you're keeping an eye out for the behaviors that might come as a result of that. Yeah. Grief support, yes. Yeah. I remember talking with teachers during COVID and how, students were coming in and they would find out after the child was in the classroom about somebody that they had lost, that the child had lost. And so knowing and recognizing that they might be experiencing some grief and then need some supports that come out of that. When we talk about Tier 3 interventions, these are for the kids who are experiencing extreme risk, so extreme risk factors. And they are answering positively when we talk about critical items such as self-harm or violence potential. And so those are the kids that are usually seeing, that would be referred to a mental health therapist, whether they're in the school or at a clinic, outside clinic. So Tier 1 is where schools can then use the screening to evaluate kind of how their school looks. What is the emotional and behavioral temperature of the school? And are the things that are being used for those universal supports, are they doing their job? So some key considerations when we talk about selecting a universal screener. You want to make sure that it's technically accurate. So determine that the screener functions similarly across all student subgroups, because you want to eventually, if you're starting off with a screener, it's advised to start small with one classroom or one grade, and then build from there. But you want to have the end in mind, thinking about how it would apply to the whole school. You want to consider the background and if what the screener was used to study, if that's similar to and comparable to your own school's population. You want to make sure that it's consistent and accurate, that it differentiates between students who are truly at risk and those who are not. So you want to make sure that it's diagnosing accurately. Excuse me. Contextual appropriateness. You want to make sure that it focuses on the outcomes that your school is targeting. You want to make sure that it aligns with the data sources that you're already collecting. And you want to make sure that it is available and has empirical support for the ages and grades that you're going to be screening. You want to make sure it's usable and feasible. So thinking about the amount of time, the amount of effort that's going to go into it, and the cost. You want to determine how the data is going to be stored once it's collected. And then thinking too about the systems of supports that would come as the results are provided, as well as thinking about the training that the people who are going to be not only providing the screener need, but also the folks who are going to be following up with those students who may indicate a greater need. So implementation. So what does it look like? We talk about, you want to build that foundation. So you want to make sure that the administration's on board. You want to make sure that the faculty's on board. You want to make sure that you've thought about the specific cultural values that you might be entering in with in your community. And then you want to clarify your goals. So this is what's going to guide your selection process. So a goal, for example, would be that you want to screen all sixth grade students in one district for anxiety to inform maybe who would benefit from additional support during their transition to middle school. You identify the resources and logistics, and then selecting an appropriate tool. There are tons of them out there, some that are free, some that cost money. You want to make sure that it's reliable, valid, and there's some evidence behind it. How you ask us questions about how long it would take to administer it. Does it come with training and technical assistance? And if it doesn't, what are you going to do? And most importantly, does it screen for what you want to know? Is it going to provide you the outcomes and the information you're looking for? So then there's the consent process, or as well as the assent process. So there's either the active consent process where you go and you ask the child, the parents to agree to and consent to participate in the screener. The passive process is when a teacher or a guardian would observe the child and then provide the information back again as a part of that screener. You want to, but and then as a, also be thinking in that not only about parent consent but also about student consent. And then as your data collection process, that's how obviously you're going to administer it. What you're going to do afterwards, are you going to collect the data online and then let a computer system tabulate it? Is it going to be pencil that paper you're going to enter it in and do your own calculations? There needs to be that administrative process and then that follow-up process. And the follow-up, I think, is one of those things that can trip people up when we're thinking about mental health screeners, right? Because they aren't often used because we don't want to know, because then we'll have to do something, right? And so the advice is, and the general practice is to start, it's to use that tiered approach, but to start small and then build from there, knowing kind of what you might expect to see out of that small group, and then being ready kind of as a result of that, seeing what you might need in a larger group. Part of that is the follow-up process. So you're thinking about what kind of answers tell you that maybe we need to actually meet with this kid today, versus, okay, there's some things that we need to address as a community that we can make plans for in the next month or so. And then identifying those community partnerships for follow-up and referral. You don't want to administer a survey on Friday afternoon that indicates a tremendous, amount of risk that you can't get to those kids in time. So Nancy's going to come up. I wanted to show you a few of examples that you probably or maybe have heard about. But these are, screeners that, look at that shift. These are screeners that are pretty well recognized, and I wanted to provide them as some names that you could be looking for. Some of them are free, some of them do cost, some of them are run by professional companies, others have been run by or provided by university research centers. They are, they explore those externalizing and internalizing behaviors. They are used, kind of initially, and then they're used for follow-up as well to kind of take the temperature of kids as the school year progresses. All right, so get your forks out. Nancy is going to tell you a lot about what they've been doing in Rock Hill. They are using the BIMAS 2. She'll give you some of that background, and I'm not going to try to take up any more of her time.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
hand it over.
All right, thank you, Lee. All right, I will continue on. Lee gave you some great background and foundation for what I have to tell you. And again, Nancy Turner, I will start in 2017, a small group in Rock Hill were saying, we need some kind of screener. We had a suicide. We had a number of students that were talking about suicide. Our counselors, school counselors, were raising their hands and saying, help us, what should we do? At that time, we did not have, we had some site-based, we were contracting, but we didn't have our own. So long story short, we have come a long way. I put nope, that's you. Oh, here I am, all right. Put a group together and we looked, and I'm glad you showed all of those, oops, sorry, all of those options. I walk, so I'm going to do this. Okay. So we looked at a number of options, so many, and of course we looked at free ones first. Free is great. A big issue with free was that it would take a lot of time for either schools, the district, groups, or whomever to disaggregate the information, to analyze it, and then get it to the schools. And although the tool itself was pretty good, we really didn't have the time for that. And so we looked at BIMAS. Now, I have to tell you that at first we looked at the cost and we're thinking, I don't know. It was at the time $6 a student. Doesn't sound like much, but we have 17,000 kids in the Rock Hill schools. And that was like, it was before ESSER, it was before the pandemic. and we're thinking, I did not have that in my budget, and we certainly didn't have it in our general budget, but we loved the tool, so we got a hold of the makers. And we said, we just want to pilot it. We want to pilot it, and they gave us a break for, it was like $3 a child, but we did just kindergarten. Well, I'll get there in a minute. I'll tell you, we did kindergarten through second grade in 2 schools, and then we did just 6th grade in our middles. So we have 14 elementaries, we have 5 middles, and we have 3 high schools that are busting at the seams. I don't know about your schools. And so we did, and that was affordable. We could do that, that was affordable. But what we loved was that it was computer generated, it was research validity and reliability, and it had all of those great components, but it spit out immediately the reports that we needed. So it was really a matter of training, first of all, me training, but then training our teams at the schools, our school counselors, our MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support teams, how to look at and read. And it was really user-friendly. I was so surprised. And so the basics for BIMUS, it is universal. So we are 5 years later. We are screening all kindergarten through 8th grade students. We just did self-report 9th grade, which I will tell you about. My goodness, very telling. All right, we do the BIMUS twice a year, and we would recommend that you would want to reflect on fall and then spring. And then what we love is that it's done on the laptop. There's teacher report, student report, parent report. We are not at parent report yet. We will get there. But we get a report for every child, and I will tell you that in a minute. What pops up too is the critical report. I'm pointing, I should be pointing here. Okay, so there's 34 questions. You might think 34 questions. The kindergarten teacher has 27 kids. It's a Likert scale. Something that our teachers needed to understand, and it took a few times doing this, it's geared, it's researched for teachers, for classroom teachers who spend 6-7 hours a day with kids. It is not a tool for you don't need to be a therapist. Actually, it's not for our therapists because they don't spend 6 and 7 hours a day with kids. It is geared and developed for the classroom teacher. Also, it is put together and developed for developmentally appropriate stages. So they were worried. I'm a kindergarten teacher, and we get to impulsive, number 6, or we get to middle school, engage in risk-taking behavior. So a lot of these needed to be clarified, that you do your best, never, rarely, sometimes, often, very often, but the other piece is in this last week. So don't think back to August, when we did it in April. In this last week, did the student. So it's a quick window of time, just like the reading screener, if you all do FastBridge, or a math screener. It is a window in time which gives you great information and one tool to put in the toolbox for your multi-tiered systems of support. And so here are the questions. There is a number 24. I won't get to that now because I know time is short. You can Google it, by the way. Parents want to know what's on that screener. They can Google it, BIMUS screener, and they can see all the questions. The whole idea is, please don't tell the students the questions, because if they do a self-report, they shouldn't have their answers memorized. But, so that was a big, okay, I'll get there in a minute. I don't want to jump around. So there are questions. It took about 45 minutes at a staff meeting after school for our teachers to do it. We all met. I met with them. It was hand-holding that first year, walked them through it. The actual training took 7 minutes because the BIMUS has a little video for our teachers and walked them through it, and then I sent them the video if they wanted to see it again, and for any new teachers. So as Lee mentioned, you have to look at training, validity, reliability. Oh no, are you serious? I have 5 minutes? I have 15. Okay, so we're going quick. Okay, here we go. All right, and so these are the areas, some of the areas that we are looking at. So negative affect, anxiety, suicide ideation, depression. We are not diagnosing, but these are signs. These are signs. What have we observed? And if you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs, you know that there's 3 or 4 questions that feed into the results. So cognitive attention, we're looking at concentration, social skills, academic functioning, not math and reading, following directions, motivation to learn, and so on. Looking at also, I love the BIMUS because there's a component for social emotional learning. So it wasn't just external and internal. What about social emotional learning, relationship skills, responsible decision making, choices, consequences, that kind of thing? That was another piece I really love about it. So the first thing that comes up that you'll see immediately is what we call the critical report. Number 24 is about suicide ideation. It was fantastic. It was surprising. It was everything all in one, all these emotions that people looking at it, taking a look at, I don't have students' names, but taking a look at students that pop up. It's a T score, if you're familiar with T. 50 to 60 is about average. Anything above 60 is concerning. And then in the red, further up, is critical. This means that the teacher in this last week observed the student either saying or observed in some way that they wanted to harm themselves. All right? And so this came up. We had a team ready. A team meaning 2 mental health therapists or 2 of our school counselors, maybe your school psychologists, who were trained in the Columbia, the Risk to Self. And we pulled those students immediately. Whether they scored a 1, a 2, and there's a 3 and a 4. 4, of course, being that the teacher had observed multiple times. So this was something that was critical. All right, I don't mean to blur your mind, but so if I had a class of 27 and I'm a 3rd grade teacher, or I'm the homeroom teacher in 7th grade, and this is all of my students, there's more. The green means appropriately developing, the yellow means some concerns, red areas mean real concerns. So across would be students. So my question would be, multi-team support, did you know about this child? And if it's August or September, maybe not. So, okay, let's look at what they're doing, what kind of supports do we need? I don't know that we need mental health therapy right now, but how about, are you doing small groups, elementary, are you doing class meetings? However, when we look up and down, those are patterns. So let's say we have a lot of red in social skills, and we sure did in 7th grade and middle, right? And so that meant that perhaps there should be school-wide programs. So we look at patterns for Tier 1 suggestions and recommendations. That's what a screener is all about, Tier 1, and then taking a look at students that may have a lot of critical need, all right? I love the parent letter. For every student, the BIMUS puts out a letter for our parents. It gives a little blurb about what it's all about. And then for each of those areas you saw, it will say where that student landed. Now, we do not just send this home, okay? But we do say it's available, parents. Come on in, we can Zoom with you, we can make an appointment. Let's go over this together. Parent-teacher conferences, this is one tool that we use. We also certainly can compare it as time goes on. But it's also friendly, language-friendly, user-friendly. The computer piece is very user-friendly. And the language is great too. So this child also had some green, that was very good, but always areas to work on and concern. All right, so as we take a look, and I'm not going to go too far into it, what we are using, the practical use of really all screeners, is to take a look at Tier 1. What do we need, other than the critical needs of the students in suicide ideation? Of course, we look at every student. But we look at patterns. That's what I love about the screener as well. Looking across, looking at patterns, looking maybe at all second grade. Oh, all second grade needs to work on making friends. Or whatever it might be that's under these categories. Maybe our 8th graders need to work on problem solving. That's probably true anyway. We identify the at-risk students. Some will need Tier 2, some will need Tier 3, and that all depends what you have in your district and how you identify Tier 2 and Tier 3. And then taking a look at interventions, progress monitoring. How are we measuring this? Is it working? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. All right, I mentioned about Tier 1. And so we're going to take just a quick look. This is one of the graphs that come out, and I'm going to walk around here because what I love to do is point out first the green. It's so important because this is teacher perspective, right? The teacher report. And, I was worried at first. Well, Miss Jones, she's ready to retire. She's a little burned out. She doesn't like her 5th grade. My understanding after talking to the creators of the BIMUS is that it is research-based, that subjectivity should not play a part in this. And we take a look, we celebrate the green. It's all about growing the green because that's what it's about. And then, because you first want to look at that red. We don't look at that red first. We look and see through the teacher's eyes, because this is our 14 schools, things are going pretty well, although we do certainly have areas to work on. A little concerning in our 14 schools that the social skills and motivation to learn and following directions under academic functioning. And so, 14 schools, when I meet with principals and I go to the schools and meet with their MTSS teams, what can we do in your school? What can we do as a district? And so our district, we're looking at Leader in Me. Other times, positive behavior intervention supports. They're all wonderful. Middle and high, we're looking at restorative practices. So there's so many wonderful programming and initiatives out there. The whole point is we see a pattern. What can we do to grow the green? All right. And so we looked at our second year, a little better. It takes time. Again, the dark green, our strengths. That grew. That's awesome. And then we'll take a look at changes over time. So now that we've done this 2 or 3 years, I love that the program shows us back to back to back, gives us wonderful graphs. And the low risk, the green, has grown. We are growing the green. It's great. It's going to take time, but this is awesome. And so that's what we point out. That means we have less % in the some risk areas and even less in the high risk. So it is working, schools, because we know this helps us understand. Whoop. There we go. Oh, okay, love it. All right. Then this is the social emotional learning report. Same idea. Lots of strength. Lots of strength. And elementary, they have class meetings. They certainly are more nurturing than perhaps we might find in a middle school of 1,800, or our high schools have 2,000 in each. And don't get me wrong, they're loving and nurturing, but with our elementary, you just feel it when you walk in. And so no doubt that there's strengths in these areas, but yet room to improve. Also, we look at the core competencies in these areas. So what I love, and I'm just going to run through this, and we had screened 5,583 at this time. We're seeing improvement. Again, I love the change over time. This really helps put things in perspective for our teachers, our district office. Why are we doing this? Why are we paying the money for this? But even more important, for our community. And I'll just mention real quick, I could talk to you a lot about this, but I know, she showed me another, okay, it's real 5 minutes this time. Okay. Okay. It was a political, but we got over it because there were they did not know what this was all about, and so they had the wrong ideas. And so I met with different community members. So I'm going to go quick. I think you have the idea of what it looks like and what these mean. And come on. All right. So I am going to go, I think you get it, and change over time. Then we were shifting. So this was the first year that we did self-report. We had been talking to other districts in the nation, Boston Public and others, that had been doing this for a long time, and they said, have teams ready for self-report, and they were right. Because, of course, and Lee was talking about this, and it's certainly our foundation, that is why we're here. So many suicides, so much suicide ideation. With this negative affect score, I'm going to just get to, if I can, come. All right, I told you about that. I want to get to our 9th grade. There we go. So we screened, it was close to 1,000 kids in 9th grade, all our 3 schools, 9th grade. And we had 94% of student participation. By the way, it's a notification to parents. Parents can opt out, but it is a notification. We don't need permission. All right. And so, we had 946 kids. And what we found was that we had in each school, let's see, I want to get there to that graph. Okay, I'll just talk about it. We had a number of, come closer. There we go, thank you. So we had in one school, 48 students that had suicide ideation in the last week. Now, I will say of these 48, there are probably 10 that said, I didn't read it right. Okay. However, let's say 38 that had suicide ideation in that last week. 55 in school 2 and 62 in school 3. We had teams ready. It took a couple days, but we had teams ready. We called the parents, we let them know. In each of the schools, school 1, we had 2 kids we had to send to the ER. They had a plan, if you're familiar with the Columbia Risk to Self. School 2, 1 student that had a plan. And then school 3, 2 students that had a plan. I feel that we saved 5 lives that day. All right, MTSS, Lee talked to you about MTSS, PBIS World for great interventions, if you are familiar with PBIS World. So our next steps, we will continue kindergarten. We're going to do preschool in the fall. We have a preschool program. We're going to do through 5th grade, still teacher report. We will do middle, 9th grade through 12th, help me now, self-report next year. It'll take a lot of planning, a lot of organization, but seeing the results for 9th grade self-report, it is worth our time and worth our organizing our teams to do this. All right. To get it to, this might look funny, but to get it to the community, I do a live stream Parent Academy on Thursday nights, and we had our principals talk about the BIMUS and how we can do that. If you live stream your school board meetings, you can live stream a little Parent Academy or a little presentation at no cost. All right, closer. So, all right, lessons learned, as Lee was saying, don't do this on a Friday. Don't do a pilot in May. We did that. Everyone was very nice, but they were not happy. Talk to the community first, and that was something that I learned. I thought, okay, we're all set. We found the money. It wasn't about really the money. It was really about the community understanding why we screen. Oh, there you go. I got a little animation for you. Okay. because we want to grow the green with the Vimus. All right, thank you very much.
I think we have a couple of minutes for questions, if anybody has any. Oh, I stopped it from growing, sorry. Any questions?
I still meet with, we use the Parent Academy, so the question was, what about parents who are still resistant? There will always be parents. Oh, thank you. There will always be parents who are resistant. However, I have the schools in their PTA, in their parent meetings, talk about the results and what are they doing with these results. The programs they're putting in. We see grades go up. The climate, the state, South Carolina, climate survey, that has gone up. The safety. So we talk about these areas. Also, as the time goes on, more and more parents don't opt out because they're seeing that, there's initiatives and that there's support for all the kids. But that was a struggle at first. And the answer is yes. It's a huge problem. There are no questions specifically about social media, but many of the deep-rooted causes for suicide ideation and for some of these others are about what's going on with social media. So that's either taken care of through the principal in the school or through individual therapies. Yes, sir. In Rock Hill, we do not have cell phones in the schools. We're not quite there yet throughout the state. It's not consistent. Yes, sir. Kindergarten through second in 2 schools and 6th grade in 2 middles.
All right. I think if Nancy will be here, I'll be here, but you won't talk to her afterwards. So we just want to thank you for your time. I don't know if Susan, if there's anything else you need to say, but we appreciate you guys hanging out and listening to us.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Nancy. Very, very helpful. Just wanted to ask one more time about the CE sign-in sheets. I think I have collected them all, but if you have one at your table, leave it on the end of a table and I'll make sure and pick that up. And the other thing is it's now time for lunch, so everybody please make your way back to the ballroom. There are box lunches available and the next speaker will begin at 12:15 in the ballroom. So enjoy.